Today I wanted to talk about the tool that I've created is one called Server Map, and we have it on. It is extremely alpha, and I have it on our GitHub. But I wanted to kind of talk through the entire process that came to this and the whys, and also kind of roll it into that new year, new you type of situation with it being our new year, our first presentation of the year. I've been dealing for the last couple of years of trying to get a lot more organized, and one of the books that I've been reading lately is called Atomic Habits. And one of the concepts that they preach within the book is that it isn't about necessarily trying to come up with the things, trying to come up with the tasks, trying to come up with the goals. It's about building the workflows, building those systems that get you to where you want to be. Everybody that goes into a particular sporting event, their goal is to win. It's the people that start developing the systems to get better, to continue to move forward, that end up having the best results and end up being the ones that win. The other book that I recently read was talking about the idea of, this is for in my own little world of ADHD, although I know some of you also relate from previous conversations, that idea of, and this is also true for anyone that deals with procrastination in general, but getting that inertia going. And so one of the things that we do at Rocket Man whenever we start working with a client is something called a health check. And we also then will do a similar type of thing. Let me switch over here. Somewhat more frequently is take a look at, and I'm just doing a quick skim. I know a lot of you have actually seen one of these presentations done by Chris otherwise, but we go through and look at everything within Jamf and look for things that are potential concerns, whether or not certificates are set up, VPP expiration dates. We make note of everything we find, not just things that have real problems, but potential problems. And a lot of that work comes from having to do a lot of those same types of things over and over and over. It's going through, and if you've ever tried to do any sort of, and I know you have, of going through a Jamf Pro server and saying, okay, I have these policies, they're deploying this thing. Let's go and see which package this is. And you have to move from packages to policies. You have to move from that, go into settings, go into computer management, look at your components, come back to the policies. Look at your smart groups, look at your configuration profiles, what's mapped to what. It's a lot of back and forth. And wouldn't it be great if there was some way we could simply pull all that information to ourselves in one nice little pane of glass? And because, as the reason Chris called on me to do talk about that, the API and the tokenization of it, is he joked, I don't know if it was in one of these meetups or where it was, that if given the opportunity, I would probably never use the Jamf Pro API, web interface ever. If I could find a way to do everything through the API, I darn well would. So the classic API has done me a lot of good. Larry Wall, the creator of Perl, had this famous quote about, there are three properties or three qualities of a good programmer: laziness, impatience, and hubris. And he emphasizes that laziness is not talking about you don't want to work, it's you don't want to do the same remedial, boring stuff over and over and over. Impatience referring to not just needing to get that information right now, but you don't have time to wait for somebody else to do. You need to get it done. You need to be moving forward and working on the next thing or the next 10 things that are coming at you. And hubris, that idea of not only could I do it, but I could do it better. And so those three qualities make up somebody that could become a good programmer, to say that none of the tools that are out there right now do what I want them to do. I'm going to make a better tool. A few years ago, why am I blanking on his name? Bill Smith, Talking Moose, gave a presentation at JNUC, and he talked about his idea of not best practices, but better practices. And he said that he's all for people that want to that say, I don't like the way you do stuff, as long as you are willing to come up with a better solution. and be prepared to back it up. And I know a couple of you saw my presentation at JNUC this year where I referenced, it was Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, and his was one of the presentations I specifically highlighted and talked about that I had found a couple of what I thought were, and what we at Rocket Man have implemented as what we think of better practices on top of some of his. And I've got a couple more toward the end of this that I'm going to highlight. But rather than doing my usual Chad Lawson rambling, why don't I pop back over here? So if either Chris or if a fellow Rocket Man member would be kind enough to put this URL in the chat, I'd appreciate it. This is the tool that I came up with. Thank you. It's right now the version that I have out here you can come and get, and this is still, notice I've labeled it as 0.1 alpha. When I tell you this is alpha, I mean it. This is a very remedial thing that, as of right now, I've only used a handful of times in our own work. I haven't tried, Chris has tried it, Hugo's tried it, and we always kind of find some little thing that isn't perfect. So I'm very much looking for, as we're putting this out there, to see if it provides some help to anybody, and if anybody has any suggestions on how it could be better, or which there's huge amounts of room for improvement. Well, great, Chad, this is fantastic, but what is it and what does it do? I'm gonna come back to this. I first want to jump over to the terminal and actually show what it does. So Server Map is a tool meant to be able to go through all the different main components of a Jamf Pro server, your policies, your configuration profiles, your static and smart groups, packages, scripts, extension attributes. I'm sure I'm missing other things. And it looks to see which things are active, which things are being actively used and deployed and referenced, and which things may just be cruft. They're not currently being used. Is that because you're testing it, or because you upload a newer version and forgot all about it? So I'm going to, and I am very much a command line guy. I have not bothered getting around to creating a UI version of it, and I don't know if I will anytime soon. L for login. What did I call this? Health check. And I keep changing the password on this, and I'll be changing it again now, so don't count on this being anybody who's thinking about being malicious with this. So giving it username, password, and URL, it then, and this is entirely written in Python, and it's quote-unquote compiled. It's using technology to freeze your code. So as if Python wasn't slow enough, being an interpreted language, this makes it even slower, having to load up all the particular components. And that's another reason that as of right now, I am only putting out the executable itself. I'm dealing with, if you've ever tried deploying various versions of Python, especially in the Mac environment, and different Python libraries under different environments, it can be somewhat problematic. So I'm taking one possible issue out of the equation and only putting out the executable for now. So now that it's gone through all this, what has it done? It starts off, and it was funny because I put this initially into my to-do list for the future, only to then find out that I'd already written it, didn't even know it. It looks and goes through a list of all of your policies and says, what policies do you have that are currently disabled? I mean, that's something relatively easy to see when you just look at the policy list in Jamf, but they can be spread out. This gives you one nice look. And whenever you're looking through this output, something that has confused my companions, the numbers in parentheses at the end of this refer to the object ID. So if we're talking about disabled policies, this is the policy ID 53. This policy right now, and a lot of the stuff, because this is our testing environment, a lot of these are testing pieces. Then it goes through and says, all right, of all of your scripts, what scripts are actually being used? All right, the easy button script that has a script ID of 1 is being used by a policy, because scripts are only used by policies. I didn't bother labeling it. A policy SS : easy button. And going back to that thing that I just mentioned about Bill and his idea of better practices, we do a lot of, when we're working with customers, our policies that are self-service, that are just there to be self-service policies. We start with something like SS : or self : SS has become our nice little shorthand, because that way, when you're creating a self-service policy, there's the display name that you see within Jamf Pro, but under the self-service tab, there's the name that the customers, the end users, will see. And we can give that a better name. So this way we can identify within that display name what helps us, and then give something better for our people to be able to see. So whenever you're looking through the output of this, it tells you what script is being used by what policy. I was looking for, I know there was one when I tested this out. All right, I thought if you see it shouted out, I'm not seeing where a particular script is being used by more than one policy. If there is more than one, it will display it. Like, you might have a particular script for example, deploying printers and using like LP admin based scripts to map a bunch of printers. You might use that same script with different parameters in multiple policies. After that, it then comes up with the list of all of your Orphan Scripts. These are scripts that you still have in Jamf Pro that are not currently being used by any policies. They're just sitting there, potentially cruft. Now, what I don't have in this version, and I'm considering, so keep this in mind as you're writing up things for the quote-unquote issues on GitHub. If you have any suggestions on this, the big trick, when I went to then do a follow-up to this is meant just to be a first step. This isn't meant to be the be-all, end-all report, though maybe it will get there. This is step 1. So when I brought this up a couple of days ago and first was testing it, turns out a lot of these scripts are sitting in have a category of either testing or deprecated or quarantined, meaning they're not intended to be active right now. I should potentially put in some note about what category they're in. And like I said, if anybody has any particular thoughts on, I'm still trying to come up with, and I would love some guidance, on coming up with a fairly, I want a nice clean format, something that I can look at visually in plain text, but maybe also could be pasted into Excel or Numbers or some other system to be able to nicely format it, some different report format. So I will look for that later. After that, it's much more of the same. What packages are in use and by what pieces? What packages are just sitting idle? And if you're like me, if you're like us, and most of our customers, this happens to a lot of people. You wind up with multiple versions of Google Chrome, for example. Sorry, that one's a preferences package. And there was another one down here. And the trick comes from, there are two different ways to upload new packages. I mean, you can upload the new version of Chrome right over the top of the old one. And the nice thing then is that any policy pointing to package 33 now gets the new package. I don't have to keep remembering to take the new version of Chrome, go to any policy that deploys Chrome and change it to this new package, just laying it right over the top of it. The downside is it means I don't have that old version to, if I want to keep in my back pocket for that 1 in a million time, and it's been a couple of years where I push out, say, Chrome, and suddenly for a school's testing site, everything breaks because Google tweaked their JavaScript interpreter, and I now need to roll back to the last version, but I already got rid of that package. So I have to then find the previous version and push that out. So there are a lot of reasons to potentially keep around orphan packages, and much like I just said, I was very grateful in our environment to see, and again, ours is a testing environment, that most of these were already marked deprecated or quarantined. So we already knew they were getting ready to go away. They're not sitting in among applications or you know, departmental apps or any one of our other categories, onboarding, anything that's meant to be deployed to everybody, and we just don't know what it's there for. But that's what this script is meant to do, is to identify what's a potential problem, step one. After that, I do the same thing with extension attributes. And then this was one of the trickier ones to write, because the one thing that Jamf does really well when it comes to deleting an object, if I go to delete a package, at least as of a couple weeks ago, it won't tell me that that package is in use anywhere. I delete the package, all that happens is that policy now has removed that. So if the policy was install package update inventory, now it's just update inventory. And if that's scoped to a smart group based on that package, I have nothing keeping that up to date. And this policy could run and run because all it's doing is updating inventory, and it's never changing the criteria, that smart group that is driving the policy, that is scoping the policy. So nothing stops me from deleting a package, a script that is already in use. But if I go to delete a group, and that group is a dependency of another group, well, now Jamf will not only warn me about it, it won't let me do anything until I first take care of the other one. So in this case, take this macOS Big Sur Cache smart group. It is being used by both this policy and this particular group. So I wanted to be able to not only identify policies these things were being used, and there should be one in here. There we go. Take exclusions, for example. Exclusions also identifies any configuration profiles that are using that one. So whereas the scripts only identified policies deploying it, packages only identified policies deploying them, groups are such a key hub of everything we do within Jamf that this will identify every policy, subgroup, and configuration profile using it. And then it will identify the orphan groups, the groups that I did not find, that the script did not find being attached anywhere. And this was our second big better practice, I'll call it. Bill, in his presentation, highlighted the importance of really thinking about categorization and taxonomy of how you name things. He had a fairly strong view on the idea of instead of looking for needs newest Chrome. His smart groups look for has latest Chrome, and then he scopes his policies to everybody, excluding the ones that already have it. Look for the finished condition and build up to that. The problem that I would run into it is human nature doesn't necessarily work that way. And if this was simply my Jamf environment, as a lot of it for you, it can be your Jamf environment. With us, where we are working with other teams, not everyone thinks in that direction. And it's more natural to say, find me the problems. Needs Chrome update. Needs file vault encrypted. Needs security update. If I look for the things that I need, then I'm one smart group can do two things. One, I can pin it to my dashboard, and when I log in, I see a row of little zeros across the top. Nobody in needs file vault, nobody in needs security update, nobody here. Everything's fine, but the minute I see a non-zero number, that little one pops up in my dashboard. I can click on that number, see who's in violation, and build up to fixing it. But also, there may be smart groups I'm using not for the purpose of driving a policy or driving a configuration profile, but simply they're to pin to my dashboard. So when I'm looking for using my script or any sort of API type tool, I get a list of these groups that are not currently in use. Well, we have, as part of our better practice, if you will, we start a lot of our smart groups with either M: or S: monitor or scope. If it's a scope, if this group's purpose is to drive our workflow forward, we give it S colon. So we know when I look at this list, M colon groups that are not in use, it might just be that somebody's got it pinned to their dashboard, and that's fine. But if it says S colon, then it was originally designed to be scoped, and if it's still here, what's it being used for? So that's what this script does. It's meant to be, like I said, this is not your be-all, end-all of telling you in a glance everything wrong with your server, but this is meant to be step one in saying, all right, here's what I know. Take this to the next step.